Welcome to the Pantheon Plus Rewind.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 67 of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, and the incredible community surrounding it. This week, we'll be discussing the recent Co-Carnage stream. We're going to dive into the official forums, check our Discord mailbox as usual, and finish up with some more tales of Bel Iris. So, brace yourselves, and join me, Desrin, and my illustrious co-host, Theric, because this week is going to be a good one. Thanks everyone for joining again, and please enjoy this week's Rewind. All right, Theric, what a week, man. It's been so crazy busy for me, at least by my standards, you know. Now, I didn't sacrificially cut my hair, but I did manage to sacrifice something. I have some old electronics. Specifically, I have a dead GTX 1080 that's just been sitting in a box since early last year when I replaced it. So I've just been kind of like waiting to take it in because, you know, you got to recycle this old stuff. Like these things are,
sure.
You don't want it to end up in a landfill.
Right.
And sure enough, when I tried to drop it off, the guy taking it in kind of offered to buy it from me.
The video card market right now, right? They'll buy anything. They're like, oh, what's this? A video card? Yes.
Exactly. And it's like, yeah, so I had to be really honest with him, though, and tell him, like, hey, man, like, this card literally caught on fire.
He probably still want it. He's probably like, all right. Maybe $10 less then? He's like...
Yeah, seriously. But, I mean, I this happened last year, but I was on a video call with a friend because we were kind of troubleshooting some stuff together. And I was on the video card and I was like, whoa! And I like, you know, naturally point the camera at my case and there's literally flames coming out of this graphics card.
Oh my
like
God.
I still have a scar on my my motherboard actually. It's just like singed spot. Hey, it still runs too, man. But,
that's crazy. You keep a fire extinguisher by your computer? Because you probably should.
No, that's the first time I've ever had my own electronics catch any kind of, you know, dangerous issue. But it was definitely an exciting time. But
wow, that's crazy.
But yeah, so, you know, he ended up not wanting the card after that story.
Oh, you did the right thing. You were the honest guy. You did the right thing and you told him. And I'm sure that he appreciates it. And, you know, it's funny, a box of electronics for recycling. I have the same thing. I have a box that's been sitting in my trunk for like 6 months. And I drive by this stupid place every day. And it's all like random junk. Actually, I do have an old video card in there too. Yeah, and it's just been sitting there. And I keep meaning to stop and take it in. And I just can't get around to it. So, yeah.
Well, it's not going anywhere. And it's, you know, probably not going to deteriorate. So it's all good. You'll get it someday, right?
Right, exactly.
but yeah, I mean, so, you know, that's my exciting thing, recycling trip. You know, anything going on with you?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, it's been a busy week at work for me. It's just felt like one of those weeks where there's not enough hours in the day to get everything done that I need to. Man, yeah, so just tired, you know, and I'm in that place again where I'm looking at my games on my desktop, all the shortcuts, and I'm like, I don't want to play that. I don't want to play that. I don't want to play that. You know, I wish we had a good MMO to call home. I'm feeling the burn. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a need for a home. I've got all these MMOs that I like, but none of them are home. So anyway, maybe talking about Pantheon will scratch the itch a little bit.
I was about to say we're about to scratch that itch so much this episode because it's been such a great week. But, you know, before we get to that, as always, we do have to thank our adventuring party from this last week, all of whom donated during the premiere, which we do on Sunday mornings. That's 9 Pacific or noon Eastern. Or anywhere in between, of course. But so we've got a great party this time. We've got Jason on the Scar Beardlord. We've got Daimlos on the Darkmere Enchanter. Gracelyn on the Gnome Summoner. Ziplox on the Darkmere Rogue. Sparrow on the Elf Ranger. Bounty Code on the Human Wizard. Redbeard Flynn on the Darkmere Summoner. And Brian Reck on the Gnome Summoner. So one last thing, we did get to give away a pledge last week, which is always so fun. So
fun.
Again, congratulations to the winner of that pledge, Zarko. Glad to get that to you, buddy.
Yeah, Zarko's a longtime listener. He always is there for the premieres. I talked to him a bit after the show, and we kind of went back and forth and just sort of chit-chatted for a little while. Super funny guy, just very dry wit, very clever guy, and I love he's got good one-liners. So that's what I think of when I think of Zarko. But I'm so happy he won, and I think that he's well deserving of it. So congrats, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start digging in. Let's do some VR news and notes.
Off we go. This week in Visionary Realms news and notes. All right, it's always a good week when we get a co-stream. Everybody loves the co-carnage streams, right? And that's what we got this week. So in case you missed it, or if you just want to relive it with us, because that's what we're going to do, because we saw it, we're going to break down some of the things that were shown off, because it was a very exciting stream. Lots of good stuff. So just to give you an overview of it, so this was a full party with Ko playing the Rogue. Now, he's played the Rogue in the past, and I think he's played Monk and Warrior before too, so he was on the Rogue again this time. They had Sacred on the Dire Lord, MacLeod on the Monk, Joppa played the Shaman, Tehom played the Enchanter, and Kilson was on the Wizard, and they were all level 18. And it took place in Halner Cave. And the way Joppa described it was this was depths that nobody has publicly seen before. So we got a whole new area that hadn't been shown off before. And man, it was awesome. So I'm going to be honest with you, Des. I paid attention mostly. My attention was focused throughout this, and I've sort of grouped these into categories, and we'll talk about this part first, but my attention was focused on the Enchanter, the abilities throughout the stream. And like I said, Tehom, Adam Mostel, their associate game designer, was playing the Enchanter. He did an excellent job playing this Enchanter.
Oh my gosh. I was so impressed, actually.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do have to be mindful of what I say here, but I had my reasons for watching the Enchanter, and I'll just leave it at that. So the first thing I noticed and was so excited to see was there was a light source on his shoulder, a floating light source. And I don't know if anybody else caught that right at the beginning of the stream, but I certainly saw it. And Adam called it out later, midway through the stream. And when he did, when he casted it, you noticed it was called Altheran Light. And what was really cool about this thing is that although it was on his shoulder, like he was the light source, so to speak, for the first part of the stream, later on, he actually cast it on Ko. So the Enchanter has a spell that can create a little wisp on any player's shoulder to act, so they can act as a light source during the stream. It's pretty cool, right?
You said wisps, and I almost got a little triggered. If anyone,
right. Forgot about your wisp.
My EQOA story, but yeah, I thought that was awesome. Huge, probably quality of life thing that I'm sure a lot of people were asking for. So I saw that. I'm like, oh, yep. I know. And they also mentioned lanterns too, belt lanterns and stuff.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because here's the thing about that, and I have some confusion. Maybe you can clarify. So Joppa said that there is going to be a light source slot for people, and he sort of used the idea of a belt slot that can house like a lantern. But I kind of wonder, like, why do that if you're implementing this Enchanter ability? This is like, it sort of took away a little bit of the excitement, to be honest, from the Enchanter spell that we saw, because now I'm like, why would you nullify that if you're going to give everyone the ability to have a light source equipped in their belt? What do you think? Am I crazy? Does that make sense to you, or am I?
No, I think that's a valid concern, right? Because we don't want to have a situation that's just so common in MMOs today, which is where kind of everyone can do everything, right? There has to be someone that's special at it, or it's not special. However, what I would say is, I'm sure that the belt lantern isn't. Well, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but. I'm thinking that they're going to have some sort of not penalty, but there's going to be a trade-off for having a lantern on your belt, I would assume. Just like there's a trade-off for the Enchanter ability, because if you think about it, that has to be on his utility slot, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Having that light it's got its own cost. So I doubt they would implement a belt lantern that has no cost.
Right. That's a good
but
point.
I do think it's a good thing that they are doing the belt lantern if there is a cost, just because I think there are going to be a lot of situations where that will be needed, where you won't have an enchanter or something like that. But again, all up to balance, like everything, right?
Yeah, and this came from a lot of the past streams. The feedback from the past streams that they've done. There's people love the darkness of it, or they hate it. It seems like there's no middle ground. People are like, yes, the darkness, and it's part of the environment. And I'm kind of one of those people too. But some people really didn't like it. They felt it needed to be brightened up a little bit. But you're right. I mean, if you have an enchanter, maybe you're in a situation where you can't afford to put that on your spell bar because you've got other needs, something you need to have an interrupt. You need to have as many interrupts as you can, for example. Maybe that's where the belt sort of thing comes in, the lantern thing comes into play. But this is the first time we've seen this spell in effect, and it did a great job. The light that it provided was definitely made a difference, I felt. So.
Yeah, it was like, the temperature of the light was very distinct too,
yes.
Almost unnatural. And I really like the graphic of it. I mean, I don't want to get too derailed, but there's an obvious difference now between old particle effects and new ones.
Yeah.
Because the new ones just look so good.
Yeah.
And the Wisp had its own, I believe it's called an Umbra, right? Or a Corona, I guess.
Yeah.
That was kind of prismatic, and I just really simple, but I loved it. I was like, this is really, really neat. So cool stuff on that front too.
Okay, yeah, and the next one is just as exciting, if not more. And this was Spell Turn. This is an enchanter ability. Yeah, right. It generated a lot of conversation because what it is, it's an enchanter spell that steals a spell from an NPC. So you see the NPC casting, you hit the Spell Turn ability, and it takes that, and then the enchanter can hold that spell for 15 seconds and cast it back. And I'm not giving away any secrets here. This was all talked about and shown on stream.
We're good.
So yeah, we're good. No NDA issues. And what Joppa said is that, Joppa or Adam, I can't remember, but they said it can be improved through the mastery system, which is cool. We saw Adam do it a bunch of times, and it has one of the best animations. You remember that black hole spell from Hyoket from Fortress of Air? That's one that they stole, which was crazy. There was a spell called an NPC ability called Unmortal Surge, which we'll talk about in a minute. Stole that one. Like, you think about the possibilities of this. It's crazy. It really, I find it super intriguing. Makes me want to play an enchanter just for this ability. So
same.
There's a lot you can do with this. A lot you can do. I think it's one of those ones they have to be careful with this too, if I'm being honest. I think it's one that could easily be abused, manipulated, probably broken in some way.
That.
Did they? What
they
did
actually
they say?
mention that. So this, I hope I'm not getting too far ahead, but they are talking about the Cripplings and how some players had charged up the Cripplings and then stole the spell from the Crippling.
That's right. You're totally right.
Which, I mean, it's a lot of hassle for probably not a lot of return. But apparently that's a thing, at least as far as I understood the explanation. But oh my gosh, this ability just, I'm like, why haven't I seen this in a game before? Like, or at least in an MMO before. It excites me so much. And yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some tuning or some weird things, but that's kind of what makes it exciting, right? You have to wonder, like, how can I use this? And like, the spells that he stole were the cool spells. Like,
yeah, right. Exactly.
Like, it wasn't like, oh, you can only steal the boring, stuff. Like, he stole the, like, giant AoE thing that, well, yeah, we'll talk about that. But anyway, yeah, I love this spell. It might be my favorite class ability that they've introduced lately. But yeah,
definitely.
Anyway.
Definitely. Couple quick notes on some other enchanter stuff. We saw Adam hold multiple mezzes, 2 to 3 mobs at a time. If you noticed, Enthrall, that's the mez spell, had a really quick cast time, a 1 second cast time.
Very fast.
I kind of like that. I kind of like that. That's thing that you can do, and it's that you have that sort of ability to manipulate it so easily. Another spell called Mana Guzzle. Now, I don't know exactly what this one did, but it was pretty cool. It had a 10-second cast time. So whenever something has a 10-second cast time, you know it does something powerful. I'm not
think
sure what
it was a channel. I think the 10 seconds is actually a channel, kind of like the monk's Burning Fist. Or at least that's what it struck me as. And at least by the name, I was like, I think he's stealing mana. And the effect, which was awesome, by the way. I mean, like, even people in chat were like, okay, that's the coolest effect. Like, so far, that's cool.
I feel like the Enchanter kind of stole the show a little bit here, with this stuff. I feel like there was so much attention going on. And I'm glad that Adam, being like the newest member of the team, got to play it. And like Joppa said that he's responsible for a lot of this stuff. He implemented the spell turn mechanic. I think at some point in the stream he talked about that. And just the things he's done is like he gets to showcase it himself, which is super cool. Anything else with regard to the class abilities that you caught that you wanted to mention, or anything else caught your eye?
I was trying to watch Ko go through the rogue abilities because it seemed like there were some new things in there, and he definitely tried to use a lot of them, which was awesome. But I'd really have to go through it again, honestly. I think you're right. The Enchanter stole the show, and I think it's because the Enchanter was played really well. And it really stood out. Like, I think even people that aren't used to an MMO with a bunch of CC probably saw what the Enchanter was doing and went like, "Whoa!"
Yeah,
like,
totally.
That's an important person to have in your group right there. So, nothing specific except for things that we might get into later with the crypt fiends that I kind of mentioned. So we'll get there, but those are NPC abilities. There are a lot of very cool NPC abilities that we can probably talk about. So
I think you're right. There was a lot of new rogue abilities. I think that we need to go back and check out because I don't think we've seen them before. It was a good, explanation of rogue gameplay. I think I liked how they used stealth as a key for building opportunity. Like they really talked about that a lot. They translated that into the ability usage. It was a good demonstration. I'm glad that they had co-pulling as well, because I like the tactics that he employed. I think that was part of something that they needed to show off. So I think that's important. I'm going to complain a little bit. I'm going to rant a little bit here. I have a critique of these co-streams. It drives me crazy. They need to let him in like an hour before the stream starts. They need to let him in to read his skills, to look at what he has. And I know some people get frustrated watching him play, and it's not his fault. Like, if I was dumped into that scenario with a book of 30 abilities and I had to figure it out on the fly, in front of 15,000 people on a stream with the developers, I'd freak out. My panic would go through the roof. I think Pantheon is the type of game that is not a game you can just jump in and play. You can't just jump in and play without prep time,
especially at level 18.
100%. It's crazy that they expect them to be able to do this. And maybe there's something going on behind the scenes I'm not aware of, but it's an inherent weakness in these streams with Ko when they do this, because it's a complicated game. It's not a button masher game. If this was like Guild Wars 2, if this was, a game that was, more straightforward, it would be fine. But they need to let him get in there. And, Ko even said it. He said it plays differently than most MMOs these days. And I like I said, I feel bad for him to go on the fly like this. There was a lot of times where he was just reorganizing his ability bar and putting new passives up, putting new things on. And sometimes he didn't even have the full bar filled up. There was 2 slots missing. I'm like, like, I'm no pro gamer, but man, oh man, like, fill your bar up, dude.
No, I think you're absolutely right, man. I think a lot of people have that, are really noticing that now, because it's starting to detract from how well the game shows. I mean, I will say that the stream was awesome, and I think in spite of that particular thing, the stream was amazing. But if they really wanted to shore that up and really paint it in the most positive light, maybe getting him a little acclimated ahead of time.
Nicely done.
Would really help, especially if he was able to like explain some of the things to his viewers, because they're his people for the most part, and having him be like, so here's a cool thing I can do when I use this ability than this ability, and that would actually be a really fond experience for new people. So I hope they do take that feedback. I don't know. It might be a scheduling issue, kind of a thing. Just he just literally doesn't have time. But I absolutely agree.
Yeah. And so it was nice to see them, from starting in a new place. I feel like the progress was a little slow at the beginning. And again, that's partially due to the issue I just mentioned. But I think that they didn't have the difficulty turned down this time. Last time when we saw Devair, they described it as being on journalist difficulty with Go. So it was a little bit easier than what it was going to be, but they didn't do that this time as far as I could tell. It looks like the difficulty was at sort of normal level, and you could see it. They were struggling. So I think that's just another factor as to why you need to have some prep time ahead of time. So just a couple critical critiques of the stream. I think let's move on and talk about intelligent NPCs and the abilities, because we saw a lot of this.
Oh man,
we saw some smart mobs. First of all, I mentioned it earlier, that ability Unmortal Sacrifice. When that first went off, I don't know what your reaction was. I was like, oh my god, what's going on? What is this?
I heard the sound effect.
Yeah,
that like I knew something was coming just from that sound effect. Like, I don't know, the hairs on the back of my neck kind of a thing. And then, big boom. And I was like, oh, yeah, that was telegraphed.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was new. I'd never seen that before. It was something completely new. I had to throw in the little lore that Adam mentioned. He said wraiths wear their soul on the outside. So that's what that is. And he also noted, like, from a tactical standpoint, they couldn't outrange it. There's no way to get away from it. All you can do with that is mitigate it with distance or line of sight. You'll always take some damage from it, I guess, is what I take away from that. The important thing too is that it was interruptible, and you saw that throughout the stream. Sacred would call
stealable.
Stealable too, yes, absolutely. The Enchanter stole it several times, and you would hear them calling out the interrupts. Right, Sacred say, "I got this one." Okay, somebody has to get the next one. I love that aspect of it. There was actually several different versions of this thing too. At first it was Unmortal Sacrifice. One of the named mobs later had a Unmortal Barrage, so like a higher level of it was what I would assume. Another ability that we saw the Wraiths use a lot was called Wrath of Wraiths, and Joppa described this as it's a damage spell that it had a chance to silence you. So obviously they're showcasing the intelligent NPCs who are targeting casters. This was something, and I didn't see it. Did you notice it? Did it always go on casters, or did it hit melee rogue, the Co or
it's hard to tell, but it didn't seem like it ever hit Co.
Okay.
From what I could tell. And one thing I did like just to toss in here was that is definitely an ability tied to the type of creature, wraiths, whereas a lot of the other abilities, like the Unmortal the big boom that was mostly on the mana weavers and specific caster mobs. So we're starting to see that kind of hierarchy of, okay, so here's things that kind of all wraiths have. Here's some abilities that only specific wraiths have, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw some NPCs that could break mez, and we saw some that were immune to mezzing. That was a little later in the stream. Some of the more higher level mobs had that ability, which is awesome to see. One of the things I talked about, interrupts, the boss battle at the end, those interrupts, the Thief of Eternity, right? Cool mob to begin with.
Pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool.
But having to interrupt his abilities looked like it was key to that fight in those mechanics, and in terms of what they were trying to do to prevent the ads that came along getting back to him to refill him, to regenerate him. I think those were some really important mechanics that we saw there. So let's talk about the cripplings. You mentioned it a couple times.
Yes.
We'd never seen these before. New models, new mob. So I'll let you go first. What did you like about them? What did you notice about the cripplings?
Definitely the color coding. No, that was part of it. Because that was a really obvious telegraph, right? You could tell something was interesting, and I don't know if they'll keep it exactly like that. But I think my favorite thing was that they let Kilson wipe everyone first.
Yeah, wasn't that funny? He's like, yeah, no, I forgot, or I didn't realize.
He's like, I was just assisting the tank. That was his excuse. I was just assisting the tank. It was a great example, and I think Ko even mentioned like, oh yeah, this is how it would happen. You'd figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I love the little mechanic of it. Like, they basically get supercharged, depending on what type of attacks you're using. And it's funny, there's a moment where they're talking about like, oh yeah, if you throw a bunch of fire at these guys, then they get, really charged and they can get really dangerous. And Ko, I don't know, it almost seemed like he was kind of half listening,
Yeah. That happened a few times.
And then they mentioned, and then there's, multiple, he's like, oh yeah, and that one over there, that's a poison one. And like, he does it, like, there's a few seconds before he realizes, poisons. And then goes in, and then he turns them off. It's great. Great.
Yeah,
moment.
no, I totally noticed that too. So the trait was called Superheated, and they're empowered by incoming fire damage. So, hey, Drac, I know you listen to the show. I know you're our resident wizard. I know you're Mr. Fireball, PhD Dr. Damage. If you use fireballs in these guys, you are not allowed in our group. You got to use that ice spell. I know you're a fire guy, but hey man, this is why the ice spells are there. We heard feedback actually when we did the Devair stream about how I was playing the wizard and I was using ice spells. They're like, why wouldn't you just use fire? It's better. It does more damage. Well, sometimes you need other damage types, right? Sometimes you want to mix it up and you want to try different things because there are things like this going on at the time or in the background sometimes. Now, there wasn't at the time of Devair, but I stand by my point that maybe there was. Who knows? Maybe I didn't know at the time. Anyway, I think it's a cool trait, a cool mechanic that they're employing with these traits. So, and then we saw a couple other mobs with different traits. We saw one of the bosses had Sturdy and Fading Presence, which did interesting things. I don't remember exactly how they functioned, but they definitely had an effect. And this is what's the evolution of the MMO, and that's what Joppa reaffirmed a few times. Yeah. How these traits and dispositions are going to keep the content fresh, keep people, in this playing when they've done something before. This is the next evolution. So that was a good demonstration of that.
Yeah, and good kind of clarification, which I could probably say throughout the stream, both from Ko and from the developers, is they're really good about picking out certain moments as learning opportunities or teaching opportunities, I should say, to kind of explain this is why, such and such, and this is what you could expect because this is our thought process or whatever. They actually did a great job with that this stream. I was really very, very happy about that. I did also want to point out one last thing that I just remembered about the Crypt Fiends. They were deep, they're deep in Devair, fighting 17s, 16s, 17s, right? And then they fall down this hole and they're with 13s and 13 to 15s.
That is true.
Which I just wanted to point that out because it was, it's just something that you're not expecting, I guess. And I think it's a bit of a trap, and Tehom might be the culprit here, because you go down there, and the first mob he targets, I believe, was Greycon. And what's your first thought? Oh, this is trash. We're just going to clear this. We're just going to clear this whole tunnel out. And sure enough, they wipe, because mechanically, they didn't understand it. And I wanted to make that a big takeaway, or at least that was a big takeaway for me from this, was hey, nothing is as it seems in Pantheon. As levels are only a part of the story. Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say. So, level isn't the be all end all, right? That's what it says to me too. Is it's not. There's more to it than just the numbers, right? It's not just a numbers game.
Oh yeah. Although numbers are a big part of it, which I think is your next point here.
A little bit, yes. So just a couple of quick things, quick little, I called shinies throughout the stream because we all like the shinies, right? Nice model on that short blade of solid smoke that Ko looted at the end there. Pretty cool looking dagger that he looted. Now, the fireball animation from the wizard. this is different than we saw from last
Fireballing.
Time. Well, it's not even fireballing anymore. Now it's like meteoring. It's this gigantic, slow-moving meteor of a thing. What do you like that? I'll just ask you straight up.
I actually do. Yeah.
Do you really?
Especially with the sound effects. I think they could clean up the sphere a bit, but the concept and sound effects of it, I'm super down with.
Huh. All right, man. All right. Well, maybe over time I will learn to love it.
Why do you hate it? I have to know, actually.
It just I feel like a fireball should be a fast moving bolt. I don't know. It seems off.
It has weight behind it.
But it's so slow.
I don't know.
If it was faster, maybe. It's so slow. I don't know. Well, whatever. It's nitpicking. That invisible floor trap that they fell down was pretty sweet. And man. How excited was Joppa when they went through that invisible wall, right? How excited was he?
That was crazy because I actually had to rewatch this one part because I was so curious. It was totally an accident. I don't think this was staged at all. But he heads straight into that wall. Like, it's like he had a sixth sense for it. Yeah. And at first I thought, like, how in the world is someone going to know that wall is there? And I thought back. Remember, he was polling, and he said, oh, there's 2 mobs here, and they got 3. Where did that third come from?
You're right.
It's a hint. It's actually a hint. The third probably came from behind the wall. And I totally missed that during the live stream. I was just like, how would you know that? And then sure enough, no, it's not like they just, make it so you're just going to have to blindly face check every wall. You just have to be extremely perceptive about your surroundings.
You are the perception king. That is crazy. Wow. But your perception is very well leveled, I would say, because I didn't notice that at all. But you're right, man. If you get a mob that you didn't know where it came from, you should probably check the walls.
Yeah.
Very cool. But then you know what? He didn't go down that pit. Why did he not climb down that pit after he went through the secret wall? There's a pit there. I'm like, climb down that, dude. What are you doing?
His chat was upset too.
I had chat turned off, so I didn't see that. But yeah, I believe it.
Yep. Yeah. Everyone wanted to climb down there. There was another point where a bunch of the devs were suspiciously all climbing a wall, and Ko missed it. I think there was something up there. I just, you can't follow along with everything while you're hosting a 15,000 person stream. But man, those 2 instances definitely hurt me a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So just some development notes, just in terms of where they're at with developing the game. A couple quick things. They said they're doing quite a bit of work on the audio across the game. This is from Joppa. Yep. We heard some new music and ambient sound right near the end, near the final battle, which is great. Mm-hmm. The ranged combat is in the process right now, and it's in preparation for the Ranger class coming online. Yay! Ooh. Joppa. Make it happen, man. Make it happen. And then lastly, we saw lots of climbing examples. One of the questions that comes up about climbing all the time is combat related, right? What do we do? How do we deal with this new dimension of combat? Because are we just going to be able to, free shots on the mobs? It's going to be exploited. Well, Joppa answered, basically he said, with the climbing being a system, almost everything will have a way to deal with you. I think that's really important because that's just takes people to the point where they understand that the viewer is not ignorant about possible combat exploits when it comes to climbing. So just reassuring people, I think.
Yeah, it was a very natural question. A lot of these inquisitive things that were coming up were very natural. I thought it was awesome. And I love when what Joppa kind of mentions about climbing a few times, and maybe he was indicating that Ko was missing something, but he was just saying, hey, again, like a reminder, like you can climb everything. And he even noted, like, it really takes a lot of retraining of your mind. And I love that throughout the stream, Ko starts thinking about climbing more. And this is a great example. He's like, wait, I think in another case, he's like, wait, if I was up on top, could he pull me down? He's starting to think outside the box a little bit. And it's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And then just some final points here that I sort of overall themes. There was lots of talk during the stream about sticking to the vision, sticking to the tenets. Ko did a interesting thing where he kind of like, I think he felt like he was starting to like keep his chat, like keep his viewers sort of from an argument breaking out about, I like this, I don't like that. And he sort of said, like they're building a game that their vision dictates. They're not building a game based on community feedback. They're not doing it. It's not a popularity contest. It's not designed by democracy, right? They're doing their vision. You just can't hear that enough times, because this is what we get when they do that. So I liked that.
Yeah. It's a great speech.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to hear. Joppa kept asking about, making sure that they're geared up, and again, impact of statistics, impact of the smallest, +1, +2 to a certain stat, and how that affects them. Joppa realizes they need that gear to progress to where they want to go. So I like that too.
Yeah. I mean, when he got that dagger, his deeps went up. He saw a very noticeable difference too.
Yeah.
It matters.
It does matter. That's right. Sometimes, sometimes I have, this is maybe just me, but you hear about Halnir Cave being so big, and it's so, we've only seen 50% of it. We've only seen 30% of this. And sometimes I kind of feel like, is it too big? Like, do you have too much space for people? And just ironically, I was talking to somebody the other day, and there was like a Major League Baseball, I guess, did like a Field of Dreams, like a real Field of Dreams game where they played in like a cornfield. This was like this week. Oh. So it sort of was like one of those, intersections of life where I'm like, if you build it, they will come, If they build Halnir Cave, this big, huge place with all these interesting nooks and crannies, that's great. That's going to get people there. People are just going to come to see what's there and do it. I mean, there's other factors involved, but if you build it, they will come. I like that sort of takeaway from this.
That was a big part of what I kind of brought out of this as well, because, I mean, Halnir Cave, if we're honest, Halnir Cave has kind of become a bit of a meme around Pantheon and their kind of public-facing what they want to show off. It's like, I mean, even 2 years ago, people were getting exhausted of seeing Halnir's Cave again. Halnir's Cave, Black Rose Keep, Halnir's Cave. But at this point, I think they really wanted to show, hey, y'all haven't seen anything. Like, you guys don't even know. And sure, they were a bit slow, but I mean, they went, I mean, I probably lost track of, where they might have been, half hour in, they're in that hallway for a long time. But then after that, it was just like, I mean, trying to keep track of everything. It's going to take some real experience to navigate that place. And one of my favorite things that I think they're starting to capture in this, and just real quick note, is I love dungeons that start one way, like appearance-wise, mobs, levels, etc., and then you just keep going, and you keep going, and you keep going. It changes, and it changes, and it changes, until you're so deep, you're in a place that feels almost foreign to where you came in. And that experience, to me, is one of my favorite experiences in MMO gaming that only a few games have done for me. And I'm getting that vibe from Halnir's. And so I'm glad that they, expanded Halnir's and have shown it again, because it really is showing that, guys, we're holding back. We're holding back. They had to teleport at one point because he was like, I don't think we're going to, make it to, whatever the next potentially cool spot is. And it was very, spread out too. It wasn't linear. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, oh, let's go check this out. The place before the boss room, he looks out to the left of this bridge. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking of too when I was saying that. Absolutely. I know. You believe that? There's all that stuff over there.
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
Anyway, Craziness. That's my little rant, but I'm loving that. That was, I'll probably say this a few times, but that was my favorite part of the stream.
Yeah. And we'll just finish on a maybe the best line of the whole stream was, if, when we talk about building it, people are going to be coming. If there's a lot of people there, you know what? If you don't like them, just train them. Yep. In the words of Ben Dean, that's the
thanks, Ben. As Co said, we're going to get t-shirts made anytime now. So you'll never live that one down, Ben. And
you never will.
One of many great moments in the stream. But I I might clip that. I might clip that audio.
I think as a community we have a responsibility to take this to the next level. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, that was a long segment, but that's it for VR News and Notes. When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into the forums and fan projects to see what the discussion's all about.
All right. So for this week's community discussion, we've actually got another new person in the community. We've got forum user Jumpkick, who posted an introductory thread on the official forums, which I'll try to summarize here. So they are an old EQ addict from the Vallon Zek server, where they made a Dark Elf Cleric. So they're looking to play a Dark Mer Cleric in Pantheon. Although, like a lot of us, they're alcoholics, so they'll probably, try everything, which I totally understand. But yeah, Jumpkick says they are looking forward to the perception system, drive-by buffing, maybe even some dabbling in PvP. So yeah, like a lot of us, they're really just kind of looking for that community immersion that we miss from, the quote good old days. So very relatable. But yeah, so make sure to go to the forum, say hi to Jumpkick. The post link's going to be in the video description. And if you're new to the community, feel free to post your own thread, and we might feature it here on the Rewind and say hi. So yeah, welcome.
Absolutely,
Jumpkick.
Man. Welcome, Jumpkick.
All right, and so on to a bit of discussion, since we did go a bit long earlier, but we've got to pick something from the community here. So we've got a post on the forums from user Kittik, simply titled "World or Character." Now this already sounds like a Kilson post, right?
One or the other. Pick one.
Yeah. So, but they put this together. So they say, recently we've seen a lot of effort and time being taken up by the development of characters like classes, etc. So they're asking, what's more important? Is it the game world that's actually a world, or the game characters that you'll use to roam in that world? They say, should the characters be so in-depth that the lack of interesting points in the game world is overlooked or excused because the characters we have are so unique that it's acceptable, that the world is kind of more generic? Or if like loot's mostly random or generated, quests are like more, bare bones or whatever. So they pulled out a kind of general quote from Brad here, just saying, he doesn't want to make a game. He wants to make a world. And they say he thinks they'd be okay with a game with just 4 classes if there was actually a world to explore, get lost in, discover with actual loot to get excited about that not everyone else will eventually get. So, kind of a big question here. I think I already know where this is going to go.
I do too. I think I have a feeling.
But yeah, world or character. So the first response here, I think, actually encapsulates the feelings of a lot of people. And it's just this person, this is a goofy warrior guy from the forums. And they say, what's more important in an FPS game? Guns or bullets? What's more important in a space game? Ships or planets and stars? What's more important in an RTS game? Buildings or units? They say, sorry if this seems a bit condescending, but it seems to me that you're trying to quibble over the importance of things that are both vitally important. In an MMORPG, you must have a world worth adventuring in, and you must have characters worth using to adventure. Trying to decide which is more important is like trying to decide if it's more important for your heart to be beating or your brain to be functioning. If either isn't, you're equally in trouble. I actually thought that was really well said.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, you need both.
Yeah, and of course, this is a natural kind of Kilson trap of either or. But I think the point is to discuss it, right?
Yeah. Like, here's my take on this. I mean, it's sort of an interesting one. When I hear characters or world, I mean, to me, an MMORPG, what makes it interesting and unique is the characters are the people, right? I mean, if you're talking classes, like that's a different thing. But I think that even classes, I mean, when I think about the people I remember from EverQuest, the people that stood out and I got to know and I still remember to this day, I do remember their class, but I remember who they were more clearly. Like I remember their personality more. I remember what I liked about them more. I remember like how we would relate to each other more. And it was we could only do that because we had a world to do it in, like we could do that. Like we could have a phone call or we could have a conversation in some other capacity, but we chose to do it in this world that was interesting and gave us a way to, connect that no other way offered. To me, if you're asking the world versus the characters, I'm leaning towards world. I mean, obviously you need interesting classes, but again, characters leans to my mind says more like a single player game, and you're talking about like NPC characters. Now, ironically, this Pantheon has introduced these signature characters that have been written into the lore that I think are super interesting and I really like.
Yeah.
So I feel like we get a bit of the best of both worlds here with Pantheon.
Yep. I think that's. I mean, I think Goofy here. You put it great, and I think you described it even further. Is that like the world is the platform, but the things in it. I mean, I was thinking we're kind of the characters in it, regardless of the mechanics of those characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And so, but I think that's kind of our kind of obvious thing. But we do have a few posts that I think actually line up with that. But might also, add a little bit to the discussion here. So naturally, we've got Vandred here replying to the thread. And he says, it's the world that provides us with all the possible options of gameplay. The items to earn and or craft, the places to explore, the monsters to fight. They say, so Vandred says, but a boring class, even in an exciting world or an exciting class in a boring world, will always mean you're going to be unfulfilled in some or many ways. And he kind of puts a nice split here, says there's a percentage here. It would be a 55-45 split in the world's favor. So
interesting.
Pretty much even, but leaning towards world, which I think is kind of where both of us are at as well.
Like the world is the petri dish, right? And we're like the cultures, and we start out as these, I'm no scientist here, and I'm going to say the wrong thing for sure because people are smarter than me about this stuff. But like, what we grow in the petri dish, we become something interesting in the petri dish. We don't start out interesting. That's just, I think the world facilitates that interest to some extent.
Yeah. You could almost say that like the mechanics are quite secondary in that sense, as long as the players are incentivized to make connections.
Yeah, exactly. Playing beside each other is different from playing with each other. And I've said this before, like so many MMOs these days are like, I play my game, but I'm just see people running around beside me doing their thing. We don't actually interact, and that's a problem.
Yeah. And I there was one like kind of slightly other take here, just to kind of close this out. Again, guys, check the link in the description. Contribute to the thread. I think there could be a really great discussion that could have a lot of ideas pop up here, which is why I brought it in here. But Dorotea says the world is far more important. So they're leaning very far on the world side. They say they have no interest in the best and most interactive character models ever made if they do not have a well-created world to do anything in. So on the other hand, they say they can live with a pathetically unattractive, non-interactive model if it has a lot of interesting things to do. So I think it kind of is saying the same thing, is there needs to be a platform for us to do stuff. And what we do is almost unimportant, maybe. I might be blowing this a little bit up, but I kind of think that's the gist, is we just need a platform. We need something to be in and a reason to interact with each other. And the little things probably don't matter as much as we probably make a big deal out of, right?
Yeah, the little things don't matter. I think we do have to be careful not to just reduce it down to like, we just need an online space to interact, because we definitely need more than just that. We want interesting, we want high fantasy. We want, swords, shields, and spells, and that kind of stuff. Like we want that theme to it. So there is more to it than just a social platform. But characters are good, and we are the characters. But if the world has interesting, well written characters from an NPC standpoint, I agree. I like that too. But again, if they exist in a world that is, uninteresting, bland, gray, who cares then, right? It's just not. It's not attractive. It doesn't incentivize any kind of interesting play.
Mm-hmm. I think that kind of condenses it down. Is there needs to be hooks kind of all over. So it really just means both are intrinsically important to MMORPGs. You can't really have one or the other because MMORPGs are both. Like that's just what they are.
Yeah, I agree. Before we move on to the next segment, because I know we're about to, I want to give a quick shout out, some fan fiction and stuff that we didn't mention last week that I forgot about. Our friend Grosinger is busy writing her story In the Sway of Storms. She released chapters 7 and chapter 8 this week and last week. Chapter 7 is at Pantheon.plus. And chapter 8, I think, is on the forums, soon to be on Pantheon.plus. So shout out to her. And again, she's contributed a lot of fan art to the show. So you see the video reel playing in the background. A lot of that is her artwork. And I want to encourage anybody else out there who does fan artwork or any kind of artwork, really, if they'd like to showcase it on the show, you can just contact us either through Discord or email or however, Twitter, whatever you want to do. Let me know. I'd be happy to show it off and add it to the video reel that you're watching, because I think it's a great forum for that, and just something to even bolster the community involvement a little more. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to that and mention the fan art.
Yeah, great shout out. Good stuff, man. Well, let's move on to the mailbox. Yeah.
Yeah. Mail on a Sunday? That's right. Let's check the mailbox. Okay, mailbox. So 3 questions this week. And the first one is from our very own Elf Ranger, also the creator of the Adventuring Party graphic, which you saw at the very beginning. I forgot to mention that, but she continues to do a great job. And that's Sparrow. And her question was a very clear one. It said, will Pantheon have lower level raid content, or will it be end game only? Oh, I know that they've answered this. Desrin, help me, because I looked for it. I couldn't find the information. Do you know where they talked about this?
Well, it depends on what she means by low level, but I'm with you. I know they've talked about this, and I know the answer was yes. There's not just going to be end game.
Yeah,
I can't find it. I'm sure if we really sought it out, we would be able to. But the gist is, yes, there will be lower level. I personally want lower level raid content. I have very fond memories of lower level raid content in my time, and I was comforted in knowing that they have said yes in the past. So maybe something to bring up again.
I agree. Yeah. What was the place in Vanguard? You're a Vanguard expert. What was the first raid zone in Vanguard? There was like a Fire Mist Gully or something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Fire Mist Gully. That might be it. That might be from a different game though, because that sounds really familiar.
Shoot.
My raiding didn't happen until Theradon. The boss in I think he was in Three Rivers or Theradon's Quarry, whatever the chunk name was.
Oh, that's what it was. I think maybe that's
big giant guy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because that was low level, right? Like
Fire Mist Gully was EQ2. So or maybe EQ as well. Fire Mist Gully was also a low level raid in EQ2 though.
Okay, so I wasn't completely
not too far off. Not too far. I'm
Thank you for saving me. Nice.
But Theradon, who was literally the first thing that I came across in Vanguard that was a raid, and the first face to be smashed by that giant club of his, because I had to mess with him. But yeah, like those things are memorable. I think of Cauldron Hollow from EQ2, which is a 2-group raid. That was just a big deal for my very small guild. We wanted to do something that was more than one group. And having a nice little short raid zone was actually really wholesome. Nice. Good memories. So I hope they do that.
Yeah, me too. Why don't you do the next one?
Yeah. So we've got Essen here. We've got Sorry, we've all seen the evaluation build that VR created to show off the potential investors or buyers. So if one major studio was to pick up Pantheon, which would be the best? Considering Brad's experience with Vanguard, he had to throw that on there just for the dagger in the heart.
Yeah. Just for you.
Oh, man. I was actually talking, I posted it in our Discord chat about this, and I wanted to give like a list of great publishers because they do exist.
Right. Yeah, they do.
But I think all of the best publishers that I know of don't do MMOs. And that's kind of the whole point I would bring up here, is that it's extremely risky to do MMOs for a publisher. So while I think there are great publishers out there and publishers that I would love to see pick up, I'm trying to remember the name that was on top of my head here. The folks that picked up Valheim, that also did was it Factorio and Coffee Stain. Yeah.
Right.
So like as a great example of a studio that just continuously picks up really not diamond in the rough, but they pick up these projects pretty early on, knowing that they're going to be huge. They just got an eye for it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know of someone like that for the MMO genre, I realize. So I had to kind of take back my Discord comment there, because well, I could speak to single player, multiplayer, but if you get to see it in MMO space.
Yeah. So the answer I have for this is it might make me a little unpopular with people, but it's only if you if we go back a year from now. Don't go from now. Go from what it was a year ago. And I'm going to say CD Projekt Red. And the reason I say that, so work back to before Cyberpunk was released and take Cyberpunk out of the equation, which even I think is a little overblown. That's another discussion though. Here's why I think CD Projekt Red is a good fit. They're very true to their vision. You look at the Witcher series, it's a game that they've made their name on. That's the only game they've ever done before Cyberpunk. And it's gotten better with each iteration. And it's remained the same from a creative aspect from its very beginnings to where it is now. Their focus is PC gaming. Now, I know they've done console for Cyberpunk, and Witcher 3 is actually getting a console port this year, I think. But everything for them is PC centric. I feel like they would treat Pantheon with the respect for the creative vision that VR has and that we desperately need, that we mentioned earlier in the show. They also own Good Old Games, which is close to my heart because I love old games, and I think they have a distribution platform through that they could leverage with Pantheon. I know they don't do MMOs. I know this would be totally new for them, but I think that they're like visionary enough that they could do something like that. So, people don't like them now because of Cyberpunk and the issues there, but they're one of my companies that I have a soft spot for sure. So
that's actually a great one to bring up. I think you have good reasons there. If a company did pick up Pantheon, it would have to be a company that just sticks to its guns, right? Like they know who they are. They're not going to waver, when they pick up a project that might not be the number one AAA blockbuster within the first month of release. Like that would be the ideal situation for Pantheon. So who knows? Yeah. Maybe they'll find something like that.
I'd love that. All right. Last question. This is a fun one from Random Rob. If you could invent any one suffix title for you and only you would have in game, what would it be? So for example, for Rob, he would choose Measure of Dragons or Slayer of Kumquats. Oh man, this one was easy because we just played the Warhammer Return to Reckoning emulated server not too long ago, and as much as I didn't like my Squig Herder, he had a very cool title, and that was Not Dead Yet, which for a ranger I think is the perfect suffix. So if I had to choose one for my character in game, it'd be Theric, Not Dead Yet. What about you?
Oh man, that's entertaining. Well, the first one that popped into my head was more like historical for me in my gaming career. and that would be the Oak-Heart. Because
like there's a story there.
Yeah, I mean, not to get super into it, but when I first started playing EQ2, which was my first PC MMO, I named my character after a family in Kinos with the surname Oak-Heart, and that was level 20. You couldn't have a last name until level 20 at that time, and level 20 is also when you did your armor quest. And I was a druid. Druids went through, I think it was Selwyn Oak-Heart and some other people, and the name just stuck. And come to find out, apparently a lot of people hate them.
Oh, really? Is that right?
A lot of people have like bad memory. I don't know if they have bad memories of the armor quest or that particular NPC, but I didn't know that for years. I thought it was great. And so when I kind of reinvented my internet persona a long time ago, from my old characters, which would be like Tyru or Teriel, not Diablo character, but yeah, anyway.
Not Teriel, no.
And I would name them Oak-Heart. But I changed everything to Desrin, as you see now, and tried to cleverly mess with my last name being Driscardia, which actually is loosely Oak-Heart in Greek.
Wow,
and
cool.
To kind of keep it around, but I would actually like to have the Oak-Heart as a title, if possible, just to be a bit of a throwback and see if anyone still has those strong feelings for those characters.
That's a fantastic story. I have so many questions. We'll have to dig into this a little further at some point in a future
Surprise,
episode.
Theric.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
But hey, this is a great segue into our next segment, though. So there we go.
Yes, it is. Let's move on. Sit back and relax. It's time for The Lore You Know. Okay, the tale of Bel Iris continues, and we are almost finished. We are not quite there yet, and we will finish probably next week. But last week we saw the transformation of Bel Iris, and we saw her rebirth, so to speak. And this week we witness her rise anew. Nothing more was said. The hooded figure's garment dragged slowly across the floor, disappearing behind the soft flicker of the fire crystals. Hearing for the first time what must be her name, Bel Iris cried out, gasping and lurching over on her side, cradling her body like a newborn. Archai produced no tears, yet the sound of their weeping is unmistakable, a cadence that is said to split the hearer in two. Twin echoes filled the healing room, one of joy and one of grief. From then on, Bel Iris took the mantle of a wizard, as if it were a family name. She grew the nursery of Archai wizards into a garden of generational strength, even more than her predecessors. Her ability to remain rock of mind and yet warm of heart made her a model to her people and an ambassador to the world. Yet always her strength relied upon the quiet mystery of her meditations, a solitude that none but the gods could enter, were they ever to be found. Today, if she were to remain in Suroa for any length of time, Bel Iris would no doubt attract the attention of arcane masters from across the face of Terminus. Yet her life is one of constant sojourning, returning to Suroa only once a year to deposit her knowledge and meet with the acolytes and instructors of the Yadahane. During that yearly pilgrimage, she carries with her the sum of knowledge acquired, spells and wisdoms from across the planet, held in her mind and deposited into the spell prisms. She appears like a ghost, without warning, as if made from the gray mists that surround Suroa, edges of her gown cut from the thick vapor. She walks down the streets of the city with no desire for recognition, yet it attends her nonetheless. First, in the silence of those who catch the sight of her, unwary they were waiting to see her until she appeared. Then in the hum of the young Adahane students. They start toward her in a disciplined column, only to finally reach her side in a mass of joy-fed shrieks. These she has mothered not mainly by her presence, which is brief, but yet by her deposits of wisdom and mirth that dwell far longer in their lessons than she does. Moving through their swarm, she never stops, but sings a few songs with the children at her side, the laughter and noise rising and falling in waves. And that's the lore you know. And that brings us to the end of episode 67. I want to thank you, as always, Desrin, for another great show, because, hey, we are now one show closer to launch. Am I right?
That's right. Yes.
Just think, how many episodes do you think we'll do before launch? Let's throw a number out there.
Oh no. 187.
All right, 187.
I literally just threw that up in there.
I'll stay close. I'll say 260. So, yeah, a little close, not close. Anyway, as always, thank you to everyone for hanging out with us today. If you'd be so kind as to leave a like on the YouTube video or a rating on your podcast platform of choice, it helps the show grow, helps us get discovered by new potential Pantheon community members. And as always, thank you to everyone. Cheers, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Pantheon Plus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name Pantheon Plus. You can follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter, and Desrin at Desrin Does also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for listening.